So anybody here who, please raise your hand. This is a completely irrelevant poll. Who knows this character? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4 people. Awesome. All right. You guys, the rest of you are old. This is from a cartoon, which is very funny. All right. So my voice is really bad today because I'm actually sick. But I hope you can survive, and I will try to avoid giving you whatever I'm having. My name is Salve Nilsen. I've been involved in the Oslo Perl community for some 15 years or so. And I usually talk about something community, right, like topic at Perl conferences for different reasons. And most of them is that too few people talk about it, in my opinion. So we need to talk about ourselves also, not just code. Okay, we should code, but we also have to talk about like us. So the goals for this talk. There is a lot of tribal knowledge in the Perl community, things hidden among us who've been here for many years, things that we know but don't share. I've tried to dig up some of those things, and I'm going to share it with you guys. There's also the question of the barrier of entry to the Perl community. Some people say, there's too much to learn. I hope to help you get a nicer on-ramping experience to the Perl community with some of the things I'm covering here. And perhaps give you a taste of things that are happening or things that you can consider putting into your schedule, or maybe how to take part in it. But before we start, I have to claim that a lot of this is opinions. This is no based. I'm not giving you the one truth or the facts. I'm giving you my impression of those. If you guys have opinions of your own, then please share those or ask questions if I'm unclear, or otherwise, let's have a conversation. A little bit before you. Now, about you guys. I'm assuming you guys are new to the Perl community. I know for a fact that some of you aren't. So this is for you guys who are new. You guys, those of you who consider yourselves new to the Perl community, please raise your hand. A bunch of people. Nice, awesome. We love new people. So I hope I can help you guys. Those of you who didn't raise your hand, I hope you can help me help these new guys with information, and we'll discuss a little bit. I thought you had to go away. No. This talk is also for people who care about newbies and the beginner experience in the Perl community. And I'm hereby recruiting the rest of you. Just saying, you are now part of the actual presentation. So let's make this a conversation. I'll cover some basics. I'll try to sort the useful stuff by types of activity. You understand it as I go. And I'll try to mention a little bit about how to participate in each type of activity. So the absolutely key introductory elemental basics for the beginners, like the really basic stuff, is like, if you don't know this, now you know. And this is super, two physical things, two things you should know about what's going on in real life and what's going on online. If you haven't been to a Perl Mongers meeting, go to one. There's a really nice map online on pm.org where you can find your nearest one. Raise your hands, please. Who has not been to a Perl Monger meeting? Okay. You guys now know it. It's usually a friendly gang. We talk about geeky stuff and Perl programming or solving problems. If you drink a beer or something else that makes you like loosen up a little bit, in the late evenings, you get to hear the cool battle stories about insane things that happen at work. Those are quite instructional sometimes. So I warmly recommend you guys to show up at your local Perl Mongo meeting. Get a feeling. There's usually nice people. It might require you to become extrovert for a few more minutes a day, if you're not, but it's usually quite nice. I actually had a trip around Europe 2 years ago where I visited a bunch of Perl Mongo meetings, mostly in Germany, but also in Austria and in a couple more places. And without any exception, nice people everywhere. So please show up. And there's also a website called Meetup.com where you can find a bunch of Perl events. They're not always Perl Mongo groups, which is like the official user groups, unofficial. They're all volunteer. There's no real official. But you find other user groups or meetup groups where they care about Perl topics. You can see that at perl.meetup.com. This is really nice. And on well, there's more physical stuff. You are now at one of the more important ones. Awesome. There are also Perl workshops. Here's a short list of them. I hope you've heard about this. There's one, a Nordic one actually. Also, if you come from the northern parts of Europe, there might be one next year. There hasn't been one for 2 years, so I'm just like mentioning it to you now.
You forgot the Dutch one.
You guys are doing like big things now. like per conferences like this is we don't do the small stuff anymore now.
The Dutch Perl workshop this year was the first year in 13 years in a row that we didn't have one because we're organizing this thing.
It's improvement.
Shut up. You're dying in the Netherlands.
Yeah, you're going up in life. Like you're improving. This is like the next level. But there are a bunch of those, and there's also a couple of other conferences that are strictly not like regional or general Perl. You have the Perl Dancer Conference, hasn't been one for a year or two, and there's a MojoConf, which there might be one next year also, if the rumors. If you like Mojolicious, this is a place you might want to go. There's a nice overview of conferences that have been and are shortly upcoming on the main ACT website, which is this URL. If you want to get those URLs I'm giving in this talk later, I'll post them on the conference website for this talk with a link to the GitHub, I think, so you can see so you don't have to write these down or take pictures or anything. And we should also, of course, mention FOSDEM. What's going on there? Who of you have heard about FOSDEM? Because we just talked about it a few minutes ago. Who have been there? Okay. Those of you who haven't been there, you should go. It's the first weekend of February every year. Sometimes it just barely edges into January. But in general, it's a brilliant, huge conference with all kinds of open source stuff going on and a nice Perl presence, and definitely worth going just for both learning a lot of cool stuff and for the feeling. I should also know that one of the organizers, Claudio, there's a typo there, damn it. Claudio Ramirez, LC on IRC, he wants help. So if you guys want to also help at some point, talk with him. There are also hackathons. These are two bigger ones. The Perl Core Hackathon is something very new. If you ever have an ambition to hack on Perl itself, as a new developer, maybe you're not quite there, but there are values and interesting things you can do with that. They are kind of sort of considering opening for like a newbie place at the next Perl 5 Core Hackathon in next year. So now you know about this. This is an opportunity that might show up. And there's also a Perl Toolchain Summit. It used to be called the Perl QA Hackathon. Those have been open to newbies also, mostly for learning, but it's not specifically made for newbies. It's more for people who want to check out the toolchain, help with writing tests, for example, or in general do interesting things that is related to CPAN and the testing infrastructure that we have, or all the tools we use for building or publishing or authoring tools. There's lots of, in many ways, one of the more interesting hackathons out there. So if you ever get the chance to go there, go for it, because it's a really nice event. I've been to a few of those. I think Wendy has been to almost all of them.
Almost all of what?
The QA hackathons.
Oh, no, I haven't been to Oslo.
Yeah, that's the one you haven't been to, but the rest.
Many.
Yeah.
Not as a hacker.
No, but as a key person that makes everything nicer. But you have some virtual stuff also, some online resources. This is still the basics of the basics. So if you don't know this, now you know. If you're not on IRC, when it comes to doing anything with Perl and the open source community, you kind of don't exist. And it's really nasty to say so, but it's actually true, because all interesting stuff happens on IRC. So if you're not on IRC, I urge you to get on there. Get yourself a shell account somewhere, fire up Screen or Tmux, have an IRSSI or a similar IRC terminal client running. Log on to it now and then, check what's going on. You have people available there. If you just want to help people or want to get help, there are a bunch of channels there. Perl help is really nice. If you want some hardcore questions answered, P5P can help.
If you want to answer.
Or if you want to answer as newbies, maybe you don't feel qualified to answer, but hey, a really good way of actually learning stuff is to try to help other people. So this is usually a good idea to go there anyway. And we also have on the rcfreedom.org the Perl 6 channel, which is a great place. Also sort of cool stuff that happens there, interesting code snippets that gives you an idea of how crazy awesome that language is, and it's quite inspiring. Yes, this is a quote from Matt, I think. All right, but you can also go to Perlmonks and Stack Overflow. Both of those have really nice, lively forums where you can get good answers and people who care about actually spending time on giving those. There's also some stuff on Facebook and on LinkedIn. I'm not following LinkedIn stuff much, but it does exist. Yeah.
Perl programmers on Facebook. Perl space programmers.
Yeah. Okay, so they're
bigger.
They're bigger. They're even bigger than this. All right. Perl programmers on Facebook. Take a note if you want. If you're on Facebook, on the Facebooks, it could be worth checking out those at least to see what's happening now and then. Announcements might show up there, or questions. So this was the basics. So now I'm saying this is done. We can talk about interesting stuff. I would like you guys to consider your open source portfolio. Think about what you're doing in the open source community as a way to almost show off yourself to your next prospective employer. Or if you are a boss or a person who hires people, that you look at people who are active in the open source community and check out what they do and how they tend to themselves. There's a lot of good things by thinking this way, and perhaps one of the best things is that this kind of pragmatic way of looking at open source work in the Perl community or in general, it works just fine alongside the idealistic side of open source, where you just want to hack on something cool, or you want to share something with the world, or it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So I'm kind of taking this view on open source now. I'm thinking about you guys and what you could possibly do to show off yourself. So think personal brand management, and that you actually when you talk with people on forums or publish code and push it on GitHub, that it's with this code comes a label of which looks like a little bit like your public image, and you build that over time, and it makes yourself easier to hire. So, what can we do to improve things? Well, mostly it means just show off your good sides, and remember that chat logs and mailing list archives and commit logs, they are for all purposes permanent and in public and searchable. So people can find what you're doing. So go and do your absolutely best for the Perl community to show off how awesome you are. And I'm going to show you a bunch of ways to do that in a moment. My point here is anyone can do it, and it really pays off, both in the short term and in the long term. Okay. Something breaks here. Let's do this. So just some basic principles before we start with the... I'm assuming a bunch of things, like you don't like the not invented here syndrome, meaning that you prefer to work with open source software, that you use code that other people have made because it's better or because it does what you don't need to do well enough. And that you're aware that when you share code and give feedback, it's a cycle that goes on in the long run, improves the code. It's almost as like a public conversation that's going on around the code. And this improvement cycle, this is something that you are part of when you're in any open source community. And if you're going to succeed with this cycle, you just have to do like anybody else that does anything in public, you have to remember your audience. The people who are going to read your code or read your mailing list or whatever. So that means write code that that makes people give feedback on what you do instead of how you do it. Meaning, if you have some way to, like, say, cleverly format code, it's fine, you can do that, but you should expect that other people will spend time and attention on commenting this instead of the actual meaning of the code and what it's doing and the bugs that are in it. And that's a cost that will go over time. So follow conventions and best practices, and it's almost like wearing a tie. It's like you don't wear a tie and a suit because it's nice, but it takes the discussion about clothes out of the whole business situation. It's boring, but you can talk about the important stuff. Principle of least astonishment is awesome. You can Google that as a nice discussion about, well, the obvious stuff. Surprising people can be funny and interesting, and you can do that. But if your core API has some surprising elements in it, you're going to spend lots of time explaining yourself instead of just moving on. So let's go through the different steps of what we are going to do as open source programmers in the Perl community. We're going to try to find stuff. We're going to go to cpan, or even better, to meta-cpan. Or we are going to go to modules.perl6.org to get the Perl 6 modules. We don't have anything merged at the moment, but the Perl 6 community and the Perl 5 community are now working on using the cpan infrastructure as a delivery channel for Perl 6 modules also. But in the meantime, you can use metacpan.org or modules.perl6.org. And if you'd like to help improving the service, that's an open source project too that you can help. And it's the metacpan project, and they have hackathons. So you can Google for those and check out when those happen. Now, if you want to look for specific code, there's another tool which is useful, and that's grep.cpan.me. It's cpan grep. The first link there has had some problems lately. So the second one works more consistently, so you could use both. And that's basically a grep through all the code on CPAN. It's very useful. You can look for specific comments or fixed messages or specific code constructs or anything else that might be useful. While we are looking for modules, maybe you think, I want to know what kind of modules I should use. What kind of modules are recommended? So there are a couple of curated lists. The most important one is Task Kensho. It's a horrible name, but it actually means something meaningful. Just try to remember it. It's run by curated by the Enlightened Perl organization. At the moment, the list is not completely up to date. There's a couple of things that can be put in there now. And I've already prodded them and say, hey, you should update it because there's a bunch of newbies now who would love to have this actually really useful list of Perl modules. Have it up to date. Like the module issues isn't in there apparently. This is like, it's been stable for years. And if you have suggestions, there's an IRC channel for that on called EPO on the irc.perl.org. There's also Matt Rout's opinionated list, which he calls MSTPAN. It's a series of blog posts on his own blog on the Shadow the Cat's website. Quite useful, actually. You could say it's his attempt at updating Task Kensho, but it's still his thing. I would say Task Kensho is more something that looks like the official Perl community list of recommended modules. As far as I know, there is no good curated list for Perl 6 modules yet. And that might have to do something with it not being that many. There's how many? A couple hundred modules on the, anybody know? Yeah. So at least Task Kensho is a name worth remembering. Let's see, possibly that I'm going a bit slow here, so I'm trying to speed up. Well, Rakudo Star is a release that has a basic set of modules, but it's not a curated list in the regular sense. So, next step you might want to do after figuring out what kind of module to use and not being sure, maybe you want to ask for advice. When you ask for advice in the Perl community, we have something called the reasonable person principle. You can read that one. It's on irc.perl.org/reasonableperson.html. It is a very, very short text about how to socially interact on IRC at least, but it works in general. And in essence, it means say what you want to say, but accept and accommodate the needs of others. So if somebody says, you're not being reasonable, you should actually adjust yourself. If you find somebody else that is not acting reasonable, then you're free to say that to them, hey, psst, this is not a good way of being. So this is so that we don't have flame wars or people that are abusive, that we have a mechanism and like a common set of rules on how to work together. Oops. A bunch of good places to ask for advice is Perl Help on Perl IRC, Perl 6 on ircfreenode.org. You can also go, of course, to your Perl mongers. That's a fantastic place to get good advice. Talk with experienced programmers that are in the community and ask them, what would you do in my situation? You also have Stack Overflow. There's a Perl tag there. And yeah, there's also some online docs. You guys could get some hands up in the air just to get a feeling of how experienced with Perl you are. Who of you have programmed less than 1 year? 3, 4 people. Less than 2 years. A couple more. All right. more than 5 years. Quite a few experienced people here. So some of this stuff should be familiar to you, I hope. So you know about the Perl command, right? Yes, awesome. It's online also, but on perl.perl.org, and I think also perl.com or something. And let's see, with that mentioned, oh, we're jumping quite fast in here. What's going on? All right. Stack Overflow, Perlock. Install Perlock if it's not there. All right. So you found something useful. You want to use it, and you know about the not invented here principle. You don't like it, so you want to install it. Of course, you do go to the local distribution, Linux distribution, or the package manager in the FreeSPSD or whatever you're using. Try to install it with RPM or apt-get. There are lots of good software there. Awesome to try out stuff, but if you're going to make something that like deploys into a production server at some point, please be a bit careful because things can break. Maybe you should install in your own way instead, and for that we have Carton and Localib and a bunch of other tools. There have been talks about this on this conference. I hope you've seen some of those. My point here is to make you aware as a self-professed newbie that there are ways of doing things, and using system Perl for the critical stuff is actually not the best idea, because system Perl tends to have to be upgraded, and that can be quite painful if your software suddenly breaks because of this. When it comes to Perl 6, there's not that much awesome going on there, and on the packaging space, it's there, but it's not always up to date. It goes a bit slower. So I would go with, say, for example, Rakudo Brew or something similar. Rakudo Brew.
Doesn't exist anymore. Ceph.
No, Ceph exchanges is an replacement for Panda.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Panda doesn't exist.
Panda, but Rakudo Brew still exists as a way to build Perl 6, Rakudo Perl 6. Or just get the Rakudo Start or Tarball. So, as you are going to use software, we have the cPine clients. Those are usually the preferred way of installing locally into your home directory, for example. cPine minus is awesome for that. cPine plus is there too. Very few people use it, but it has still a really good way of creating distribution packages. cPine.pm, which is the original one, while a bit better now than it used to be. It used to be very clunky, and you had to go through like pages and pages of configuration before you could even use it the first time. Painful, like horrible, but it's so much nicer now. But it's still not as nice as cPine minus, which is very fast and lightweight, and you get up and running very quickly. All those together, well, with cPine minus on top, is like, if you use that to install stuff, you're on the right path. You're making life easy for yourself. As open source projects, those aren't very approachable to improvement, in my opinion. You can meet people who hack on those on the Perl Toolchain Summit. Some of those authors are there. So if you ever go to one of those, that's a good place to meet those and perhaps discuss if something can be improved. But it's still open source, so you can do so. And as Wendy said, Ceph is a good installer for Rakudo. Now, if you found something useful and you decide this needs an improvement, this is now the point where you really can show off yourself. Up to now, we talked just about the super basics. Now we're talking about how to actually improve something. So you can offer ratings, you can volunteer help in IRC channels, or in Stack Overflow. Those are the main places where comments and discussions can show up. There are other places too. You can get a lot on like Perl, for example. But these are like the ones I would claim are the most immediately useful. CPAN ratings isn't that much, but it's very visible on Meta CPAN. And you can give useful feedback that lots of people will read. You can also use rt.cpan.org to check on bugs and report them or help fix those. And two ways of doing that is using a command line tools called Perlbug or Rakudobug, depending on if it's Perl 5 or Perl 6 you're using. It's all that. Please just go through it, try it. I won't show you how to do it right here. I'll assume you can figure that one out yourself. But remember, not all Perl projects are on request tracker on RT. If you go to metacpan.org, you can find a link where the actual bug tracker for that specific module is located. A lot of people use RT because that one is offered for free by the Perl community to everybody who publishes Perl software. But not everybody likes RT, and there's some things around it which annoys certain people. I think it's a fine tool, but as a developer, when you want to solve some problems, you have to find where the actual bug tracker is. This is the way you do it. So if you want to help improve Perl itself, there is a huge Perl to-do list. The Perl to-do pod file, you write perl.doc, Perl to-do, will point you to the actual URL where it is. It's not currently part of the Perl distribution, but there's a link there to a Git repository somewhere where you can see what people would love to have done. And picking something simple there is a fantastic way to get rolling in the Perl community. It's probably one of the best ones if you're not already into the module, the CPAN word. There's also a nice list on rakudo.org, on that URL. You can figure out stuff there. My point here is not to tell you what to do. This is how you can figure out what to do. You pick and choose according to what you need, how you want to express yourself, what your business needs, and what you like. Because we have to think about if it's fun also when we're doing open source. Yeah?
I would mention the CPAN pull request challenge. It's a great way to get to know some modules and to improve the modules.
That's a good point. The CPAN pull request challenge is something going on once a year. It's usually announced on blogs.perl.org, which I haven't mentioned here, which is kind of stupid of me. But if you get your RSS reader or your whatever, however you follow blogs, to follow blogs.perl.org, you will at some point, usually in the spring or winter.
No, you get.
It's not a continuous thing. It's a period, right?
It's continuous.
It is continuous.
Yeah,
I thought it was only a short period.
No, you get every month a module assigned where you have to create a pull request on GitHub.
Yeah.
It can be either a new feature or fixing a bug or even documenting some stuff of that module. And you can do as many pull requests as you want, but at least one
every month. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So the pull request challenge is something ongoing all the time. You can sign up anytime you get a module every month where we have to do one thing at least. Yeah.
Shameless plug, there's a talk about it tomorrow.
There's a talk about it tomorrow. All right.
And before that, you should, of course, realize that you should be able to use Git.
Yes.
Which is
Could anybody here who does not know Git? Okay, you are fine, you guys. Anybody who sees this video later, you have to learn it to really be productive in the Perl community. All right, but let's say you are at your business, you have found this module which is really nice for you, but you notice there's something weird with the ownership of the module. It's on cpan. It says need help as a co-maintainer. That is actually, there's a new way in the Perl community now to signal to you guys that there's a need for help. And the way to do that is there is a need help or handoff or adopt me as a user on cpan that the author has said or the module, the post admins have said to signal to you if you can adopt this module or if you can help, this would be awesome. So you can look for those. That announcement is on the neilb.org's web blog for a few years back. And roughly, it just means adopt me means the original author is gone or doesn't reply or is may have passed away. So you can just contact the admins and you get it. If it's handoff, it means the author says, I don't use this system anymore. Somebody else can pick it up for me. And you can just say, I want it. Or if it's need help, it's easy to become a co-maintainer. And all those ways are great ways of helping the community and showing off your skills and making something actually valuable going on. Pick a module. There are a lot of those on these lists, and all of those are useful. I have to speed up. It's incredible. If you want to publish something, everybody gets to that point. I'd say, please don't publish your own software unless there's a need for it. And how do you know if it's a need for it? Check for viability smells. It means, is there actually somebody who's complained about it in the community? Somebody says, oh, I wish there was a module that did Norn. And then you say, hey, I have the same problem. Let's make something. That's a good way to actually, a good reason to make a module. Does your idea kind of smell like it has something to do with an infrastructure that other people can build upon? That's a good sign. If it's not, if it's only your personal tool, don't bother. If other people can use your software to create something valuable, that's also a good sign for if you want to publish. And maybe your business has strategic reasons. They want to shape the market they're working on. They're working in, say, for example, by making one certain service easily available by commoditizing it, and then on top of that, offering a more lucrative offer that the others don't. Ubuntu use this way to get a really big market share of the cloud infrastructure market these days.
I completely disagree with this last slide. Because don't publish unless, and then you mention 4 things that are very hard to judge for the one who wrote the software. So
yeah, no, well,
why should you be so?
No, but there are insane amounts of duplicate software out there. That's my problem.
It's funny you should say that, because half an hour ago you were complaining about all the crap on CBAN.
Yeah, but that's not. But it's not that it should not be there. It should be. You should be able to differentiate between all the different stuff. But I'm very glad that lots of people put stuff on their GitHub.
Well,
their own private stuff that they probably thought would only be useful.
This is my recommendation. It's only my recommendation. I would say my real message here is please think about before publishing, because if you publish reactively, like I just write something and out it goes, you're not showing off your best side. If you actually make an effort to show your best side of the cool stuff you're doing, that gives a much better picture of you, and it's also probably quite a bit more useful for the rest of the community.
I agree, but the things you put there, like, is there a need or people ask?
No.
You can't tell.
No. you have to make a decision. Anyhow, a few useful terms you should probably also know when you're out looking something. When you mentioned DarkPan earlier today, those are all the Perl modules that are in businesses that aren't on CPAN. We have the term DarkPan for that. We also could be on GitHub, but
it's not part of CPAN, and Perl modules that only exist on GitHub are DarkPan as well.
All right, okay. But you can manage those too with Pinto or Pan2 or a bunch of other tools. There's something called BackPan, which is a copy of everything that's ever been on CPAN. You can find that on backpan.perl.org or backpan.cpantesters.org. It's something you might want to mirror, but it's 62 gigabytes of size. You can get the full history of all of CPAN on a USB stick these days. But you should probably know that, yes, there are USB sticks in circulation. So you can actually get those. 5 minutes left. I'll have to rush it, okay? But when you publish, I'm saying if you do it, please make it easy to contribute. Make it sure that you don't make weird stuff in there that people start commenting instead of commenting the important stuff in your code. And publish to GitHub or GitLab or a couple of the other places.
Salve?
Yeah?
Another recommendation, which has been discussed at QA Hackathons quite often. If you do publish stuff like that, don't publish it alone. Have 1 or 2 other people responsible for that stuff that you publish. Because when you die, or go to hospital, or disappear, whatever,
that is
it goes to the orphan.
That is especially useful if you manage to make something successful. Yes. But let's assume we're still beginners and we haven't reached the successful bits, and those come later. Also worth mentioning is something called quality test, KWALITTE. That's actually a useful way of getting feedback on how to avoid stupid mistakes other people have done in their code. It's not like a yes list, it's a please avoid list, and you can automatically test for those, and there's even a website that summarizes your quality points on this list. It's actually useful, I think so. Upload on Pause, Perl authors upload server, or on the Perl 6 ecosystem repository if it's Perl 6 you want to upload. And if you want to actually work on the infrastructure, the Perl Toolchain Summit is probably the best place for this. You might also do something useful on the Perl 5 core.
The Perl Toolchain Summit is mostly on the invitation.
Yes, I've already mentioned that in one of the earlier slides, I think. But it has been open for newbies before.
Limited amount of newbies.
Limited amount. Yes. My point.
It still is.
It still is, but so I'm trying to build up some ambition in you guys, because it's a really cool place to go, and if you ever get the chance, I say again, try to go there. So this is, I don't think we'll go through it, but there's an important part of being part of a community, and that's the outreach part. We'll rush very quickly, wear your t-shirts proudly, bring them to conferences. There can be an icebreaker, make sure they look cool. And if somebody complains, just say, no, this was 10 years ago. Perl is much nicer now. Stay positive. You can also help event organizers. That's a fantastic way to get into the community. Go to Wendy and say, how can I help? Can I do some video stuff? Or other YAPSs or hackathons or meetup events. Involve yourself in Perlmonger groups. It can help your job to get visibility by actually putting on your job t-shirt or cap or whatever, and then meeting and saying, hey, we do cool stuff. And you can do that at all the places I've mentioned. And this is the end. The important thing here is to get the word out. You can do that on a bunch of places. You can talk about your Perlmonger group event and push those. And it's worth repeating at the end that you should repeat yourself and repeat yourself and repeat yourself and repeat yourself and saying there is something cool going on. And you kind of have to repeat yourself because your success actually depends on it. People have to know that something cool is going on and that you guys are involved in it. And sadly, it requires repetition. So I think we'll stop here. There's a bunch of points about you're not alone. You can get help from the rest of us. Feel free to ask. Other than that, welcome to the Perl community, and I really hope that you stay for a long time and perhaps even find some newbies later that will come. Thank you.